What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy, back in with another video, and the ban list just dropped this morning. Boy, did it shock the entire Yu-Gi-Oh community, myself included. I totally didn't see a ban list coming out in the middle of the season out of nowhere that completely obliterated Tearlaments to the ground. We saw Kick Alice getting banned, the names going to 1, even the Shizu cards going to 1 each. So I don't know, the deck seems dead to me, but maybe it's still playable. We still have Pearl Rhino and Rhino Heart at 3. I just wanted to take a quick look at the best decks, or playable decks after this list goes into effect, given that we have a couple events coming up. I know YCS Leon in Mexico are still going to use the old ban list, so Tearlaments are probably going to dominate there. But then Vegas and onwards, this is uncharted territory. We don't know what's going to be good. Tearlaments are, completely smoked. So let's dive in and take a look at some of the good decks, decks that are at least marginally playable after this ban list goes into effect. From the very top, we have, of course, KASHTIRA. Everyone knows this is a new Konami's pet deck. This is coming out in Full Tone Hypernova. All the cards are super expensive. So this is going to be a very expensive deck, but nothing got hit on this deck. Not like the OCG where they have 1 Fenrir, 1 Unicorn, 1 Field Spell. Everything's at 3 and full power here. So this is going to be definitely a top contender. They're able to lock out up to 3 zones on turn 1, and then also rip a card out of your extra deck. And then on your turn, you literally have the first card that you have to play, ideally, is something that breaks this lock, because they do have a Walking Macrocosmos that also banishes cards face down. And then that can continue to lock your zones on your turn. So their turn 1 is pretty oppressive if it's unimpeded. Definitely get out those side deck cards like Book of Eclipse, Nibiru the Primal Being, maybe even cards like Artifact Lancia, Chaos Hunter, anything to stop them from comboing off on their turn and then kind of neutering your extra deck, as well as setting up their board with a Macrocosmos and a Fenrir. So this is a deck to watch out for. Probably one of the top tier 1 decks, I would say. And then I also took a look at the OCG ban list because, taking a look at their format, their list, Tearlaments is still the best deck there, but they kind of got it hit a couple of times, and then we can kind of see some other decks kind of sprout out of the shrubbery, decks like TRI-BRIGADE, SPRIGHT, and this is at full power in TCG. In the OCG, they only have 2 Fractal, 2 Tenki, and then they only have 1 SPRIGHT, Jet, and then 1 Starter. We still have 3 of those cards. Elfing Van does hurt a lot, but there's still other ways for this deck to combo off. We still have Gigantic Sprite, you can summon the TRI-BRIGADE kit. We can still make very oppressive cards like Brotherhood of the Double Dragon Lords, being able to bounce on either player's turn is a quick effect. That's obviously very, very good. And then paired with 3 copies of Starter, this deck could be completely viable. It's something that you definitely got to check out. But there are cards like Artifact Lancia, which kind of have crossover that kind of hurt this deck if they're siding it against KASHTIRA. And then obviously the KASHTIRA A-Rise Heart banishing everything does hurt this deck a lot. So if this deck's playable, you probably have to side hard for the KASHTIRA matchup, but it's something on the radar for sure. What else? Branded. This deck is getting a lot of new cards in the upcoming set. We're getting Grand Guigno, which is a new fusion monster that allows you to banish it to special summon any, Despia from your extra deck or from your deck. And then you also are able to Foolish a level 6 or higher dark or light monster from your extra deck, so you can actually Foolish Shadal and then search the Schism, so you have the Window Lock as well. We have Lubellion at full power. Guys, pick up your Lubellions if you can. They'll probably go up in price once this deck sees play, because Lubellion is a staple in this deck. You're able to set up cards like the branded Trap card, which allows you to pop cards, or the Spell card, which allows you to draw cards or special summon back Missteals. Magnemite didn't get hit, so it's kind of crazy to see this, being into application. I think Magnemite at 3 is really, really powerful, especially in this deck, because you are able to search Lubellion as well as other dragons. And then Mirror Jade being non-targeting removal is always, always good. Everything's still at 3. We still have this at full power. We have cards like Guardian Chimera, so I think this deck is definitely something that could be relevant. Labyrinth is another card that's another deck that's very good in the OCG right now. It's a trap-heavy deck. It's essentially Eldritch 2.0. We have a quick effect multi-faker, Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castle, which allows you to set any copy of any normal trap from your deck upon the activation of a normal trap. So it kind of revolves around trap card effects. They also have these furniture cards, which are essentially hand traps that allow you to discard them from your hand to set a Labyrinth trap card from your deck. And those are like the fastest effects, because you can discard them at any point in time. So you can actually pair them with cards like the Ishizu Shufflers. Even though those cards are at 1, it's still something that you can pair them with, discard quick and then set something, and then you're able to banish on the same chain to disrupt your opponent's graveyard effects. So this is definitely a deck that can see play. You can search cards like Eradicator, search cards like the viruses. You play a lot of 1-ups that are searchable with Lady Labyrinth, and then you're able to activate them on your consecutive returns. So this is definitely a trap deck to watch out about. Definitely side some Twin Twisters, some back row hate. If they do play this deck, there will be floodgates as well. So something to keep note of. True K Dinosaurs is another deck that can come out of the woodwork. We have Lithogasm at 3, which is kind of annoying because that card does also hit the extra deck. So, you know, when this deck goes off, it's really, really explosive. I had a couple of combos. I was kind of playtesting it before, and it does really go off. You're able to put up a huge board with the Scrap Raptor and then with the dinosaur cards. We only have Mytholinosaurus at 1, so that's kind of unfortunate, but then Lithogasm at 3 boosts that up a lot because you're able to just start that off your entire turn with an extender and then pop your babies in your hand and put up oppressive boards. So definitely check out this deck if you guys haven't already. FLOOWANDEREEZE, this is another deck that's still somewhat playable. We saw Barrier Statue getting banned, which is an awesome hit. It does hurt this deck quite a bit because previously being able to set up the entire lock and then your opponent cannot special summon was one of the main reasons that this deck was so good. But we still have D-Shifter at 3. We have, you know, M-Pen is still a really driving force in the deck. It's a walking floodgate. And then we have the map being able to disrupt your opponent upon the normal summon during your opponent's turn. And then we have the Dreaming Town as well, allowing you to special summon a normal summon a Ryza or normal summon an Apex Avian to continue to negate your opponent's plays. So I think this is still playable. It might not be a super top contender with the removal of the Barrier Statue from the metagame, but I think it's still good enough that it could see play, maybe top a couple of regionals here and there. Sprites. We saw Elf getting banned. That really, really hurts. But is it that bad, though? Because, you know, we still have a lot of cards at 3. We have Starter at 3. We have Blue at 3. We have Jet at 3. We even have Gigantic. We're still able to make a lot of plays. We're able to... These cards are essentially Terratops on their own. They special summon themselves, and then you get a plethora of monsters. We're still able to OTK with the Ninja Mosquito, getting 5 monsters on the board, and then just crashing into your opponent's high attack monsters so we can win. And this engine is highly splashable into a lot of decks. A lot of cards do have level 2s in their engine, like TRI-BRIGADEs. We have TRI-BRIGADE Kit. So being able to play this maybe with some other engines like the Gishki cards that are also coming out, we can build a ritual deck based around that. It's unfortunate that Elf is unable to revive a Gishki Abyss and continue to search, but that's all right. There's still ways to adapt, and Sprite being able to mesh well with different engines that do play level 2s, I think still makes this deck possible to play on some capacity. Tearlaments. We know this card, like the cards all got essentially wiped out of existence, but maybe there is a reality where this is still playable. In the OCG, they're playing cards like King of the Swamp to make Rukalos because Kikalos is banned. You can also make Big Daddy Grapha with the King of the Swamp and any tier name. And Tearlaments can be easily splashed, I think, as an engine. We still have the names at 1. Maybe we can splash them in with Shaddolls, because when you fuse into a Shaddol window with these, you can infuse another Shaddol window because they activate in the graveyard. So we still have Pearl Rhino at 3 as well. That's a really, really, really powerful card. Maybe there's a way to splash the Tearlaments or create some kind of pure deck. We have Diviner of the Herald as well that can foolish the Millers, allowing you to mill 5 instantly. It's going to be a lot harder to resolve these name effects because we only have, you know, Kikalos is gone. We only have King of the Swamp, so you kind of have to pair them with another card in your graveyard in order to make your fusion plays efficiently. We still have Rhinoheart at 3, which is really good as well. So you can still go into Kaleido relatively easily. So maybe Tearlaments are still playable. I don't know if they'll be the best deck. I kind of doubt they will be, but they're certainly still splashable as an engine. And speaking of which, maybe they can be splashed into Branded as well. Branded Tearlaments could be a deck. We have Branded Fusion. They're able to foolish any dark monster from your deck by making Lubellion. So maybe that's something that you can tailor your deck towards, being able to foolish a tier name and then make Winda on the spot, or just go into explosive plays with that milling engine, as well as playing copies of Aluber and then Albaz Fallen to make Tearlament plays. And then you have Swamp King as well, which pairs quite well with this deck. You can search Polymerization, go into Guardian Chimera that's non-targetable, and then also just continue to play with Branded Fusion, maybe use that to make a Rukalos. And Rukalos is really, really powerful as a card, especially now that we can't really easily make it. I think a lot of decks will struggle against that Walking Solemn Warning. Dark World is another deck that was really hindered by Tearlaments existing. Turn 1 Dweller really just shut this deck down completely. Now that Dweller turn 1 is not as easy for them to make, potentially even gone from the format completely because there aren't a lot of decks that can easily make rank 4s, Dark World might just see a lot of play. I know some of my friends were kind of experimenting with this. You're able to draw a lot of cards off of the rank 8, the Coach Giant Trainer. You're able to make a lot of big boards on turn 1. And this deck, none of the cards are really once per turn, so you can continually recycle. You can loop cards out of your opponent's hand with the Silva. A lot of players might not be main decking Bystials anymore because Tearlaments are gone, so this is a lot better. Previously, a Magnamut on your Grapho or something would hurt a lot, but now if people aren't main decking those cards, if they're going to be sided or even not sided at all, if, you know, dark decks are not really seeing play, then Dark Worlds could really shine. We have a lot of cards at 3. This is a really explosive deck that doesn't really have a lot of counterplay besides cards like Abyss Dweller and Shifter, which might see less play in the metagame now. So hey, maybe Dark World is something you could do. You could pick up 3 structure decks and innovate the deck that way. SWORDSOUL is another deck that's kind of been like a tier 2, tier 3 deck. A lot of players were kind of experimenting with it in the previous ban list because it was a really heavy anti-meta option. You could play cards like Shifter even in the deck and then just combo off with cards like Moye, your extenders like Ecclesia. Maybe this is a deck that could see play again. It's relatively cheap as well. The cards got reprinted recently and a lot of the cards are easily accessible. So maybe this is a deck that could be good again. You know, like playing a bunch of hand traps, Moye, Beatdown, and just making Shishao and making Baron with some of the new cards paired with hand traps. It could be something that's really good as well. Pure RUNICK is a deck that was also good in the OCG. I kind of scoped this from their metagame. They have obviously 3 Card of Demise, which we only have 1 of, so that kind of does make a difference. But I think Pure RUNICK is still like a good deck. You could play a lot of Floodgates, especially going into the format. No one really knows what's good, so catching people off guard by surprise using a lot of trap decks like Floodgates, Rivalry of the Warlords. There can be only one Gozen Match even. Trap decks typically shine in the first couple of weeks of new formats because people don't really know what's going to be good. They're kind of experimenting with different archetypes, a lot of combo heavy strategies that don't really play backward removal. So this is almost like an auto win. Your win con is generally milling out your opponent, locking them down by the Floodgates, and then inevitably decking them out with your Runic spells, or maybe you play burn spells to burn them to death, kind of like how Mystic Mind did that. But now we're playing Floodgates as opposed to Mystic Mind to make your opponent stumble and not be able to play. And maybe even Runic Sprite is another deck that could be a good option because we still have everything basically at full power minus the banning of Elf. MATHMECH could be another deck. This was previously decently good when Tearlaments didn't have like the Shizu cards and then Sprites were relatively new. Like this deck was still seeing some play. You could play Shifter as well. Circular is just full combo on their own. You play a lot of hand traps. So maybe this is something that could come back out of the woodwork to haunt the metagame again. It's relatively cheap as well and easy to pick up. So this is another deck that you guys can pick up really quick now that the cards are cheap on TCG Player before it goes up if it does see play, which I think it's good enough to top deck some regionals after Tearlaments are gone. EXOSISTERS, same kind of deal. It was kind of relatively playable in the previous format before we got all these Shizu cards. Maybe this is another deck that could see some play. Martha is still full combo on her own. Ash Blossom, not a lot of people were playing it because of Shizu Tearlaments. Are people going to be playing Ash Blossom right now? I don't know. If they don't, then this deck is a lot better because Martha just resolves every single time and you're able to search a lot of cards and then combo off. This could be a very good strategy. I don't know how good the KASHTIRA matchup is. You know, they don't really use their graveyards, so it's kind of hard to say if EXOSISTERS are really good as a matchup against that because they do revolve around your opponents kind of moving cards out of the grave or you trying to move cards out of their grave. And they're kind of like a banishing strategy, so it might be a tougher matchup. But you don't really care about a walking Macrocosmos, so this could be something that you could tailor to beat KASHTIRA because they don't really counter this deck. And then that's about it for the decks that I had. If you guys have any options or any ideas, anything I missed, let me know in the comments below because it's really exciting. It's almost a completely new format. We've seen Tearlaments being nuked. This is kind of like 2013 when Dragon Rulers got nuked. So I'm kind of excited to see what's good, what decks are playable. If you guys have any ideas, definitely let me know in the comments below. And let me know what you guys are going to be playing for the next format for the upcoming YCS Vegas. What are we going to see played? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.